Chapter 22, Part 3. So, like I said, we're getting away from actual pieces of artwork like paintings you can hang on a wall because that becomes objectionable. Um, that's part of commercialism and consumerism, and we're rebelling against all that. So, we want to make process art and installation art and performance art and have happenings, and there's no. And land art is part of this too, where we don't want to have something you can put over the wall in your bourgeois living room, meaning, your fancy person that buys stuff and has no idea what it's about. So they really want to have the meaning of the work embraced and how it was made. So they're trying to get into some unconventional materials and chance and unpredictability. Now, chance and unpredictability, that is John Cage. He's still influencing what's happening, or he's in the height of his influence here. Installation art, this goes back to Joseph Beuys. Body art's another thing that happens, sort of a subheading, and performance. So performance is not a play. It doesn't have a narrative usually, but it does have some bodily interaction. Now, Marina Abramovic is the biggest performance artist, and one of her early pieces with Ule, this is her partner, both romantically and artistically for many years. They work together and they really take on similar sort of unisex looks with their hair buns, and they really, how do you want to say, conceptually get on the same level. So there is a bit of nudity that starts to happen. They're not the only ones, but this one is certainly intimidating for any audience participation to come into the gallery, perhaps to see another piece. I don't exactly know all the details on this, but for anybody to get into the actual gallery, they have to go through this space and be rubbed by these two nude bodies. Oh my God, can you imagine that happening today? I kind of can't. But it was a rite of passage, or however you want to say. It was an intense experience. She was very sincere about this, but I really don't know more to say about it than that. She and Ule parted ways, and they did a really famous piece, which was interesting to me, that they started on opposite ends of the Chinese Wall, the Great Wall of China, and it was like 1,200 miles, and each of them walked like 600 miles and met in the middle. And it was quite sad and poignant, and there's a video on that. You can look on the YouTubes for that. But it had to do with their breakup and the end of their relationship creatively and romantically. But anyway, here we are with nudity in the 60s, or sorry, 70s, 1977, and intimidation and trying to get people to really experience something in a, I would say, very confrontational way. So we get into video. Portable video happens. So our three big things that shift here in the 60s and 70s are performance, video, and installation. And under performance, you could say those happenings would occur. And under installation, a lot of different things happen. But mostly installation art cannot be bought and carted away. Although we've broken those rules. We break every rule. In 2019, every rule gets broken. So don't think that everybody's a purist in this day and age. Everybody's trying to make money. Okay, not in a bad way. Portable video cameras were first made in 65, and then video really suited artists because it was cheaper and easier, and they could edit it more easily, and they could play around with it a little bit more. Feminist art also in the 60s and 70s happens, and social political movements are happening, and they were creating specifically female art, but also trying to bring in those past women like Artemisia Gentileschi and a lot of others. What's her name? Mary Cassatt and other people who were previously ignored were perfectly legitimate artists, but because art historians were male, museums were run by males, the art world was run by males, there was a lot of recognition that did not happen. So feminist art is bringing back the history of work. And here we are, the dinner party, Judy Chicago, who now lives in Belen, New Mexico, and is going to open her own museum. Very interesting. She just spoke recently at UNM. I just saw it in June. I think it was June. Anyway, really interesting, dynamic, controversial person. the dinner party, and this is a really interesting piece because it's not just ceramic, but it involves textiles, it involves these other little place settings, it involves a lot of other parts. This is sort of near and dear to my heart in a way. I'm not a big fan of her work, to be totally honest. And there's a piece of hers in the Albuquerque Museum, which I think is really not, should I say it? It's just hideous. But anyway, this was made near where I went to school, Cal State Northridge, back in the 70s. She employed a lot of people to help her and work with her, and that was another way to bring in artists that were women or whatever, to employ them as well. And she's pretty good about acknowledging people's help. But anyway, this has got Frida Kahlo, Georgia O'Keeffe. This has got all kinds of women artists with a place setting and sort of something that indicates their artwork. And she places this in different museums, and it causes a stir. And a bunch of other names mentioned here of women, you can see the writing there, that were not included in history, and she's fighting for that. This is now at the Brooklyn Museum. So since the 80s, and well, we're calling this the 80s, but 79, but you get the idea. I don't exactly know the first time it was shown. I think it was in San Francisco. So we get into postmodernism. So we're done with modernism. So when you say modern art, you're really talking about the 60s backward, right? There's nothing in the time frame. We now are disillusioned with progress. We're disillusioned with plastic. We're disillusioned with bigger and better and every machine version. And, I know we're still doing like, oh my God, I got to get the next upgrade on the phone or the computer, blah, 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 blah. But there's a pushback in the 80s, seeing all the landfill and pollution and all this stuff happening from all of this progress, quote unquote, which we say it. So in art, and the history of art is complex, and we're deciding that we're going to take multiple directions, all of them equally valid. There's so many different things happening. And nowadays you see really the 21st century, honest to God, really the 21st century only, a little bit before, you start to see contemporary artists from other countries outside of Europe and America. You're seeing South American, you're seeing Chinese, you're seeing Japanese artists, you're seeing African artists, you're seeing a lot more diversity in the sources for modern artwork. Appropriation is also important, and that is recycling or recontextualizing an existing image. Now we get into copyright, and when you think about appropriation, you can kind of think about sampling in music, something like that, although a lot of controversy here. And what else? Painterly images. We start to get back to painting in a sensuous manner to make a recognizable, expressive image. A lot of work, too, in the postmodern era, or even a little bit earlier, the idea of really painting representationally, that still happens, but it's underground and it's illustration based, and you see it in comic books and stuff. And then later that merges back into the fine art world. But for a while it's separate, lowbrow art. Or you can look up custom culture with the K-U-S-T-O-M, but there's a lot of that going on. And then finally it merges back in. You have words and images and all kinds of stuff that are happening. Feminist movement, gay activism. We're going to look at Basquiat quickly, Hollywood Africans. Now, this is 83, and we have had these moments in time. I mean, right now we're in a wonderful moment in time where there's a lot more opportunity on screen and behind the screen. We're seeing like DuVernay. She's directing all kinds of things. Just a lot of names and faces that we see in Hollywood representing all kinds of different cultures. But at this time, there were a few, and he paints them here. There were a few handful of African American actors and directors that were going to Hollywood, and he is from New York. Basquiat is in New York. He was friendly with Warhol. They end up actually collaborating at one point. A couple of really interesting films done on him. One is I think two are fictional, and one is a documentary. And I'm forgetting the timing on this, but they're like 10 years old at least. Anyway, he's the newest best thing. He does some street art. He does graffiti, and you can kind of see how this is playing out in here. He's taking the lowbrow hip hop and break dancing and um, graffiti, and then he's throwing that into proper painting here. So this is a 7 foot by 7 foot. Now we're getting into acrylic too, by the way, acrylic painted canvas, and he's commenting on the Hollywood Africans, like how they're sort of making it, and then he puts a line through it, and they're sort of not. So a lot of different things happening. Sugarcane um, and tobacco. Those are early. If you look back at our maps, oh, you don't. I didn't upload it yet, but there's the trade routes from the Caribbean up into the U.S. and so on, the slave trade. So he's commenting on a ton of different things here. Self-portrait as a heel number 3. So it's crazy. He's got this crazy sort of dreadlocked hair that sticks straight up. So kind of interesting. Wild. Just absolutely super talented guy. Died at a very young age. Jenny Holzer, text art. Absolutely love this piece. Oh, love, love, love it. Think about this in Vegas, and it's part of this consumer culture. And then she pops this in there, protect me from what I want, which is like an anti consumerist message. Wow, that's so subversive. I love it. Digital realm, we get into this. I think you probably know a fair amount about this already, but just the sense that we're using the web and we're, how do you want to say, this piece is an actual thing online. I think you can still go to this, but it's hard to explain her work. I'm just going to say Google her and look these up, but some of them are separate URLs, like it's being uploaded in different parts of the world, and it's a really strange, interesting piece. I don't have really a good way to talk about this. I would say video art is too, and digital art is one of my weaker things. All right, that's it.